What's going on, everybody? My name is JP, and I want to welcome you to the Stable Cyclist podcast. We got an emergency podcast on tap for today with Hannah and Kevin Sims, who just completed the Cape Epic in South Africa. And a few details for people that might not be familiar. Cape Epic is an 8-day stage race that takes place every March. It is kind of stationed out of Cape Town, South Africa, and it is renowned as being one of the hardest stage races in the world. It is a total of 378 miles over 8 days with an eye-watering 54,130 feet of elevation gain during the race. It is an incredibly hard race, but more difficult than the race may have been their planning and journey to get there, which you'll hear about in today's episode. One more thing before we get them in the studio, there was some technical difficulties on my end where my computer decided to take audio not through my microphone, but through my headphones. And so rather than real clean audio on my end, it sounds like I might be talking to them on a Vonage style phone circa 2005 from South Africa. So I apologize for the audio on my end. It is a great conversation. Enough of all that. Let's get Hannah and Kevin Sims into the studio. Well, this is what we would consider an emergency podcast because it's not on the regular schedule, and we're here because we've got a crazy story to tell that just happened. And if people hear about Cape Epic, it's a multi-day stage race. I will have described it better in the introduction, but I have Hannah and Kevin Sims with me today because they have maybe the most unique story I've ever heard of somebody getting to Cape Epic. And yeah, welcome to the show, Kevin and Hannah.
Hi, thanks for having us.
Glad to be here.
Hannah and I have known each other for a little over a year through one of our sponsors, Flow Formulas. We met in a Google Meet with Nina Machina a year ago. Kind of kept track of each other on social media since then. But uh, yeah, this is a wild story, and we could get deep into the weeds of the race itself. But before we do any of that, I kind of want to just set the table with a daughter father pairing for racing and how each of you both came to kind of be super into the bike, because we could just say elite rider Hannah Sims and coach Kevin Sims, but I think there's a lot more to that. So Kevin, I want to kick things off with you and kind of tell us how you got real into bikes and then the level at which you're participating and doing things with it these days.
Yeah, that's awesome. I am a product of BMX way back in the day, and from there transitioned to mountain bikes when they were invented or they came about, and kind of fell in love with that, and was just a real mountain bike enthusiast through having the kids. Hardwood ski and bike north of where we live in Ontario is very close, so that became a hub for everybody. But like for our family, for both kids, we're racing there a lot. Um, as each of the kids worked their way through the system, and I continued to race as a masters athlete, we just were very much in tune with what was happening across Canada, internationally. Yeah, and so we were very, very, very much involved in the sport of mountain biking for a long period of time, especially during when Hannah and Noah were growing up. And then I kept racing in masters. I ended up kind of taking it to the extreme and going to masters worlds, and I was masters national champion about 5 years ago, just before COVID, and I think I was sixth at world championships when they came to Mont Saint Anne. I went to Grand Fondo world, so kind of really took it to the next level. I think the kids tried to emulate that a little bit in their own cycling world, and Cape Epic was always a discussion around the table, like, dinner table. And I was a high school PE teacher for 30 years, and as a retirement bucket list thing, I had always said to the guys, I'm gonna take a little bit of my gratuity or my retirement funds, and I'm gonna tag it to something iconic to wrap up my, well, maybe not wrap up, but really culminate my mountain bike racing dreams, and then enter Hannah Sims with a free entry.
Yeah. So also, Kevin, you're pretty involved with coaching these days. If I, sift through your Instagram carefully enough and just read your story, how much are you coaching these days?
Yeah, so our son Noah was maybe 10, 11, 12 years ago, got right into the sport of road cycling as a junior. And so I kind of took a little bit of a tangent in my coaching from mountain bike coaching into road coaching. And we quickly realized that in the road world, the riders coming out of Canada and the US or North America in general, they need to get to Europe in order to establish themselves on the world scene. So we developed a few programs here in Canada that are similar to like Hot Tubes is in the US. And so we are a junior team that is our mission is to try and get junior Canadian junior riders to UCI European start lines. And so my involvement in coaching now is with a group with the what's evolved to be called Canada Ignite Junior U19 team, and Ignite Junior Cycling is kind of our brand. And I am retired from teaching, so the last 3 years I've been full gas from April through to September, where I'm doing about 20, 25 training days with the guys, whether it's down in Valley of the Sun, Tucson, Arizona, or Brevard, North Carolina. And then I'm trying to get riders to about 50 start lines. And of those 50 start lines, maybe 15, 20 of them are UCI races. And so it's kind of my retirement job slash, I don't know, real hobby, way to give back, way to try to develop something, maybe a bit of a legacy piece for me in the sport. So that's what I'm currently doing between April and August.
That is
Yeah.
fantastic. And as a teacher myself, that like always lights my heart up when I hear people like saying super passionate in the sport once they're done teaching. So yeah. Hannah, you grow up in this family where dad is like crazy bicycle guy. And so many of the times we see like totally one of two things, very divergent paths happen when parents are super involved in a sport like cycling. Either the kid has wants nothing to do with it, or they go all in. And so how do we get you to the point where you are in the past few years where you're trying to make it push into that elite level?
Yeah, yeah, I think good call starting with my dad's history because that sets the scene well for the family I'm coming into here. But yeah, I both my brother and I got super into mountain biking growing up. I think yeah, part of it the programs at Hardwood we had such a good like core group of other kids in the sport too that it was just super fun and we just loved being on our bike. So yeah, grew up just spending tons of time racing locally, some Canada Cups, Ontario Cups, that kind of thing. And yeah, mostly all like mountain biking, did a little bit of BMX, a little bit of road here and there. And then, yeah, actually took a little bit of a break from the sport in high school, just kind of hitting a point of wanting to do other things. So maybe I had a little bit of both, a little window of kind of wanting to do something different. And then yeah, I was heading off to university and sure enough, my dad's like, "Oh, you sure you don't want to bring a bike with you?" And anyways, he ended up convincing me to take the bike to uni with me and it's like, "Oh, you don't have to use it, but it's there." And so I'm like, "Okay, sure, sure." And then sure enough, for Frosh Week, I get a text from my mom like, "Oh, hey, I saw their cycling team tryouts." And I'm like, sort of that like keener Frosh Week, you're like, "Oh, say yes to everything." So I'm like, "Okay, let's go do the bike tryout." And yeah, sure enough, it was like a really awesome group of people. I was like, oh, hey, I remember how to ride a bike. This is pretty fun. And then, yeah, just like that environment, like really brought me back into the sport and yeah, raced like a university season mountain bike, road racing, and yeah, was loving it. Came out of university and was like, all right, I want to keep racing, keep riding. So then I found an opportunity with the Toronto Hustle team back home, was starting up a women's gravel team, just kind of as gravel was starting to grow and develop. So yeah, jumped in with those guys, and then unfortunately, kind of COVID hit in the middle of that, but just used that as a window to kind of ride and train. And I feel like I was living at home, so my dad and I actually did like put together lots of little challenges and ways to stay motivated together and keep riding. And yeah, just kind of kept jumping through different teams and continuing to sort of narrow into this gravel endurance mountain biking focus. And now I'm racing as a privateer in the off-road scene.
Awesome. So your dad coaches, and you said there was a time during COVID where you were kind of making challenges up. Do do you continually work with him now, or what has that relationship been like?
Yeah, my dad coached me for quite a while, actually. I feel like, all things considering for a parent-child coaching, like things went quite well,
Sure.
and we stuck with that for quite a while. And then, yeah, eventually hit a point where it was like I was taking it pretty seriously, and we kind of figured we're on good terms. Like it'd be nice to just be able to be the dad role and number one fan. And so yeah, we've have taken the coach athlete relationship out of it now.
Okay.
Yeah, I coached both the kids, and
Yeah.
reached a level for both of them. And I had my hat on usually, and the rule was if I spun my hat around backwards, I was speaking to coach. And if my hat was forward, it was like I was dad, like, "Oh, how are you doing? What's going on?" If I spun my hat around backwards, like, "What are you doing? What is going on?" So it became a little nonverbal cue that the kids would try and receive the content in a certain perspective.
Sure, that makes sense. How you said there came a point where we realized like we need to continue to maintain a good relationship, and we have a good relationship. What were those what were the things that made you come to that decision? And I guess Kevin, I'll start with you as the dad. Like, what made you get to the point where you were like, I think this is better if we can continue to have a good relationship? And you're, like you said, Hannah, we're getting serious now.
Yeah, being in the sport, I for so many years, like coaching, I've seen sort of various levels of parent involvement, and I had seen a few cases where the parent being involved was a detriment to the athlete, and I always felt there was a maturity point for the rider where if you let go and give them an opportunity to breed their own independence, maybe with another coach or another specialist in the sport, that was more advantageous than me coming down harder or coming down with more intensity or coming down with like a greater involvement. So I feel like with both kids, when I did let go, they became more independent themselves as they had developed a relationship with that next level coach that was able to bring yet again another perspective on them as a developing athlete.
Did you lead that conversation that, hey, like I think we need to have somebody else work with you?
Yeah, for sure. Like we're, we have dinner as a family regularly, as all the way through, and it became just like a dinner conversation. It was like, okay, I think this is what should happen next. And the kids at first were like, why, why? And I just think it was openly discussed. It was very transparent. It wasn't, and so they saw it. And I think, even looking at Noah, he was ready to go to somebody. And I had said to the both guys that you need to have somebody else who's maybe closer to racing. So for Noah, I'm about mountain bike background. I still understand a lot of physiology, but he needed to have like his coach was Todd Harriet out of Seattle, and Todd was way closer to the road scene. He had coached Nielsen Powless and a bunch of other high end riders, and I was like, no, I think this is a better person to align your time and whatever. And same thing with Hannah. Like I was like, Hannah, you're working with your particular coaches, and I think they have more to give you. I also thought for Hannah it might be super valuable to have a female coach instead of a male coach, and so she may speak to that. But I also found that as being part of the conversation.
Yeah, Hannah, for you, how hard was it to walk away obviously, from because there's that balance of like, this is my dad. I don't want to hurt his feelings and seem excited that he's cutting me loose. But at the same time, were you looking for that freedom, or what was that like? Can you speak to that a little bit?
Yeah, I think I was maybe wasn't necessarily looking for a change at the time, but I think sort of as it was, we sort of like talked about it more, came to realize like, oh, this probably is a good thing just to like again, yeah, develop as an athlete as well. I mean, the price of dad's coaching of free was really nice. So that was also a reason to not switch, but um, no, I think it was, yeah, it was good just kind of what he was saying of getting other opinions and other people that are kind of doing the racing that I'm looking at doing. And yeah, it was good. It was like very much an open conversation and yeah, I think it kind of all timed out for the best. But I mean, definitely lots of people in our area growing up, like I know my dad's a really awesome coach, so you're like, oh, why would I go somewhere else? Like everyone wants to be coached by you. But yeah, it kind of pushed me to like also explore and expand and yeah, kind of find some new relationships and keep developing as an athlete.
Well, and I start with all that because what we're going to talk about next that you went and did requires you to have a fairly functional relationship as a father-daughter and as if you had that former coach athlete relationship. And so I kind of wanted to let everybody peer in a little bit to how all that back stuff, prior background information, probably helped you pull off what you went and did. And so I guess that brings us to January 21st. Friend of the podcast and soon to be guest, I guess, when this will air. Kelly Jones posts through her account and through Usway's account that they're giving away a free registration to Cape Epic. And if you think like Unbound or any of these other races have big entry fees, Cape Epic it'll take your breath away what the entry fee alone is for Cape Epic. And you, Hannah, posted in the comments, you were supposed to post a reason why they should give you the entry fee. And you wrote, it's a dream for Coach Kevin Sims and I to compete at Cape Epic as a father-daughter team. My dad's always been faster than me, but finally, after the last few years of training, I've gradually caught up, and we're finally about the same speed at ages 27, 57. Perfect timing for Cape Epic. And friend of the podcast, Nina Machina, responded with, I approve this message. So, uh, Kevin, you mentioned we had talked about Cape Epic. I had talked about Cape Epic. But Hannah, when you filled that in, had you let your dad know, hey, I'm gonna maybe sign us up for this? I want to know like the order of events here that then transpired.
Yeah. I don't know if you remember it, Dad. I can remember writing like seeing the contest, putting the comment in, and I think you were like walking by, and I was like, oh, guess what? I just entered us in an Instagram contest to go to Cape Epic. Like, mostly joking, honestly thinking nothing of it. Like, most Instagram contests you enter and never hear anything back. You're like, oh, there's 1,000 comments. Like, this is such a long shot was so that was definitely my mentality when I entered. I didn't actually think anything at all would come of it. And yeah, we were down in Costa Rica at the time, and so I headed home. I was actually moving out to Victoria from Fernie, so this was February 1st, I guess. And so I had just done this like 12-hour drive in a blizzard to move out to the island. Got in super late, crashed, went to bed, woke up, kind of the classic wake up and you're like, where am I? A bit disoriented and being in a new place. Check my phone, still kind of like half asleep. I'm like, oh my God, there's a lot of notifications. And so I work in marketing and manage some other accounts as well. So I'm first thought is like, oh, maybe this is like one of the accounts I manage. I'm like sifting through, okay, this is me, like what's going on? And then yeah, see Kelly's post saying, Hannah Sims, you've won an entry to Cape Epic. And was just like total disbelief. I like sent it to my dad and was like, remember that comment? Like, what do you think? And yeah, I think we were just like kind of in shock processing for a little bit solo, and then we kind of called each other and we're sort of feeling it out. I was like, could you actually do this? And he's like I could do it. I didn't know if you could actually do it. And I'm like, I could pull this off, I think. And so yeah, from there the puzzle pieces just started coming together.
That's wild. Kevin, what I want to hear your take of kind of getting this. I mean, it's probably about like getting asked on this podcast. You're getting everything secondhand through Hannah. So what tell us the story from your end, or like what were you thinking as everything happened?
Yeah, well, I remember the passing comment, but I'm like, Instagram contest, like I don't even, how that works or whatever. It didn't register as like an option, right? I was like, okay, I just assumed it was a marketing tactic. But what we like, Hannah was down here doing some training, and I live here for the winter, and we were riding together a lot, and the terrain here in Costa Rica is very similar to Cape Epic, and I remember us riding and sort of after the comment, we were talking about how, really I am aging out-ish. I'm aging. And so, all my metrics are getting a little lower because of age. I'm trying to hang on to them. And meanwhile, Hannah's doing a tons of training. So while we were riding, we were like realizing on 2, 3, 4 different training sessions, like 5 and 6 hour rides, we're like, dang, we're pretty close, right? Like I'm listening to our breathing on like this one climb called Cerro Negro here in Costa Rica, and I'm like, wow, our breathing is very similar. Looking at our cadence, we're very similar. Looking at our, power output, they're appropriately close to what they should be for an hour and a half long climb. And so I just remember us having a couple of different conversations, like, wow, we were really similar. And then of course the call came in. Hannah's like, so this just happened. I think that was the title of your text, like dot dot dot. So I listened to it. And Wendy, my wife, was beside me, and she's like, what? And instantaneously, like Wendy's our number one fan for everything cycling, and she's like before we even processed together on the phone, Wendy's like, oh, you guys got to do that. That's amazing. She was all about it, right? And so we're like, okay, listen, count to 10. I got to process this. Where are we? What are we doing? Where are we on the planet? And then literally Hannah, like as she said, she kind of gave us a call, and we were like, can we do it logistically? And of course Wendy's in the background still like, yep, you guys are doing it. You guys are doing it. You guys are doing it. You got to do it. And so anyways, yeah, we sort of processed and took a look at flight paths and timing. And I had done a ton of training, and I know Hannah was, ready for her season. So how many weeks did we have prior to departure where we knew we were going and we had committed? I forget, but it
I
was
think
maybe 5 weeks,
6 weeks.
6 weeks.
Yeah, six
I was
weeks.
gonna say six, yeah.
Yeah. So I feel like we both had a really good base, and then we committed, and then it was like you were in BC and I was here still, and then I think I put together a little like tune-up training plan for myself with where I was located. I think you probably used you and your coach put together a tuning plan for yourself, and then yeah, I'm really really pleased the way we arrived at the start line. But yeah, that was our pathway, I guess, from my perspective.
Yeah, well, and it's I want to add, you said we had 6 weeks to figure out when we knew we were going to when we were standing at the start line. Most people plan for this race specifically for like a year, 2 years, because it is a bucket list type race for most people who aren't pros. And so this is why this is such an interesting tale of like, oh, okay, lightning round here we go, Cape Epic, guys.
Yeah.
I want to talk about the travel to get there because there is no easy way to get to South Africa. There just isn't. So how did you go about going there and getting there? And I want to say, Hannah, on your socials, I saw that you did a full trip around the world. It might not have been all at once, but tell us about how did you get to South Africa?
Yeah, so I guess yeah, another piece of my puzzle was I was heading to New Zealand for a project with Kona bicycles. Um, so I had to do a bit of switching around of flights to change my New Zealand home and decided it made the most sense to just go straight to South Africa. So yeah, I went from Canada to New Zealand for 2 weeks and then had a nice long 36-hour travel from New Zealand to South Africa. And so I was there about 10 days before Cape Epic started. So I had a little bit longer to kind of settle in and acclimatize, which was really nice. If people have the time, I definitely would say it is nice to get there, get a feel for it, kind of get back into some heat for me, which was really nice. So yeah, but definitely long travel.
Kevin, how about yourself? What was your travel like?
For me, I was coming out of Costa Rica, and my Garmin said I was 100% heat acclimatized. But I had to transition through Canada, so I had to go home and check on the house because we had all the snow and shovel roof. So I was trying to hang on to my heat acclimatization for a week in Canada, and I was on Zwift, and I had done all these miles like in Costa Rica. So I had that. So it was Costa Rica to Canada, a week in Canada, and then I was actually pretty clean with KLM. I was Toronto to Amsterdam, Amsterdam to Cape Town, and there was tons of riders on my flight. I ended up arriving 2 days, 3 days before the race started, and luckily Hannah had set up shop in Stellenbosch. And so I was able to drop into Stellenbosch with Hannah and ride for 3 days. And she knew where she was going, what she was doing. She knew where the grocery store was. Like it was flawless for me to land on the ground with her and her have done that sort of preliminary research and prep. And amazing that we were pre-riding and we found all the signs that were the section of stage 5, the queen stage of the actual race. So we rode that, and during the race when we hit the section that we had pre-ridden on stage 5, man, Hannah just knew where she was going. She just turned the screws and we had the best stage 5 ever. So yeah, it was really good. I was 3 days early. It was enough. I would have maybe liked one more day, um, just to get grounded. But for the most part, it was pretty smooth travel. And then yeah, coming home, I just retraced my steps.
How familiar were both of you with mountain bike stage racing before this? Had you done many of them? Did you know like we're about to take a really big bite here? Or I- Hannah, I would assume you've done some, and Kevin, maybe with your background you spoke of, but Hannah, how much experience did you have in this kind of racing?
Yeah, it was good. I have done a couple stage races. I've done single track six in BC twice, and then I did BC bike race last year. So definitely helped to kind of know how the body responds and fueling and recovery for I would have done 6, 7 days of racing. Um, Definitely not as long. Like Cape Epic is another beast with the length of the days and the amount of climbing as well. So, yeah, it was still a lot looking at the profile of the race, but it was nice to take in some of that other experience.
Yeah, for me, I was my wife Wendy and I back in the day, we were into adventure racing, and we were going to try and do. I don't know if you remember the Eco Challenge.
Yep.
So we were going to try and do the Eco Challenge, and we had done a ton of qualifiers to try and make that, and multi-day stage races like, but you were nonstop. So I was very very familiar with the effort required for the Cape Epic, and I kind of equated it to higher intensity day to day, but back to back to back like it was in adventure racing. So I was ready from that perspective, but not as much multi-day stage racing on the mountain bike as Hannah.
Was there a point, Kevin, where you realized like we are in over our heads here, or did
Yeah.
everything stay pretty managed?
No, no, no. You mean for racing Cape Epic?
Yeah.
I don't think we were very nervous at the beginning, and I'm not sure if Hannah would agree, but I was very nervous. I was very nervous to, compete with Hannah and make sure that she had a partner that could finish. I really, really wanted it to be successful for my kid first and foremost. And we had said to each other, like, listen, if there's, I am getting older, and if there's an injury that comes from overuse or something, I want you to go on and finish independent. So I was really nervous about that at the beginning. But then, Hannah was actually the one who's like, we were chatting lost before about our approach. She's just like, let's just day by day. Like, what's up first? Well, let's register and pre ride the prologue. And so we got on the prologue course and we were like, oh man, this is just like racing at hardwood, like when you guys were kids. It was single track and flowy and berms everywhere. And we're like, oh, this is right up our alley. Like, this is our wheelhouse for sure. And so that was day one. And then every day, we didn't really talk about the next day until we'd done the day we just finished. So I never felt over my head or overwhelmed. I knew I had the fitness to try, bearing some sort of unaccounted for injury popping up. But I really felt like Hannah's approach to the daily goals and was really, really good. Never felt over my head, just a bit nervous at the beginning. That was it.
Hannah, where does that come from? That ability to just like, hey, we're only going to look at this. We're just going to check the box today. Where have you learned that, or why have you found that to be real successful?
I think that's probably come from other stage races, like especially BC Bike Race last year. We had like a one of probably the best pro female fields in maybe ever, or at least in a long time. And so yeah, I think last year at BC Bike Race, I it was definitely a bit higher intensity and shorter days than some of my training and racing I'd been doing that season. So I think I just really had needed to leave room to surprise myself and just go out and try to stay with the front of the pack and see what happens. And I just found that, yeah, just focusing on this moment and just do what you can today and then reset, and the next day is a new day. And I often was able to surprise myself and maybe pull something out that I wouldn't have thought I could if I was getting overwhelmed by what's to come the next few days. So, yeah, I just kind of brought that approach into Cape Epic because, yeah, definitely when you first look at it, it's like, okay, I think these are going to be some of my biggest days yet on a mountain bike, and there's going to be five of them in a row. So it's really easy to just maybe get overwhelmed by that. And so, yeah, we just really focused one day at a time. And yeah, it was kind of funny throughout the week. I feel like my dad said, we wouldn't really talk about the next stage until we kind of had completed that one. And so it was funny throughout the week seeing at what point after a stage we started to feel like talking about the next one. So after the prologue, I'm like not even done eating my recovery meal, and my dad's like, "Okay, stage one, here's the profile," like diving into tactics. And then I think after like stage two or three, we were like, I don't want to look at that until like bedtime, and it'd be like 8 p.m. We're like, "Okay, what's the plan tomorrow?" So yeah, it was funny seeing how that changed throughout the week of when you'd process the day, and we're like, "Okay, I can think about tomorrow."
So you're taking this very like methodical, I guess we'll say, approach to how you look at this at the stage race. As that was happening, you were steadily climbing the ranks within the GC of your group. You guys were in the mixed team, if that's the correct terminology. Is that correct?
Yeah.
And you eventually climb all the way to fifth overall in that division. And at what point did you start paying attention to like, hey, like we're starting to really move up on GC here? Um, was that also a thing of like we're not even going to pay attention to it, we're just going to get through each day the best we can, or was there some tactics towards the end? And Kevin, I'll let you kick that off.
Yeah, I would say there was tactics for sure. We did the prologue and there was live timing. And so all the way through the live timing, we were winning. Like we were in first. And all the teams were going and nobody was passing us. No one was passing. I guess they kept the top three teams to the very end because they were South African teams and they'd done it in the past. So the whole afternoon, we're in first place because it's a time trial and it's the prologue. And as I'm looking at the times coming through and the other mixed teams, I know I was logging like, the coach in me is like, okay, like that, those guys are a minute behind us. They're like 5 minutes behind us. Oh my God, those guys are half an hour behind us. So I started doing a little bit of an inventory. And I think that set my mind like, okay, when we came into it, we were like, oh, it'd be great to, and we talked to some other people. It'd be great to be like, middle of the pack or better. That was our first thing 6 weeks ago. And then we did some more research, like, oh, you know what? Top 10 would be a realistic, you know, shooting point for it. And then when the prologue was times were coming in, I was like, oh shit, like here we go. Like we could be really competitive. So and then yeah, I think we were competitive. We went in with a tactic and a strategy with every stage.
Hannah, this is a question specific to you. Sometimes when we do things with our parents, there might come a moment in the process where we're just like, Dad, shut up and just let me do this. Especially when we're doing things that are long endurance events. It can even happen between really, really close friends where we're just like, yo, I need you to not talk right now. Uh, were there any of those moments out on the great South African plain?
I would say for the most part we were actually pretty good. Like I feel like in our race routines, sort of morning leading up to the stage, like we both have a pretty similar approach, which I think definitely helped us. Um, I'd be like definitely a few times maybe in my head out on the race course when maybe my dad's like, I think the one stage we started pretty fast and I feel like he was just like ripping through the pack and I was like, oh, okay, I'm dying, but I gotta go change your wheel. And you're like, God, why are you doing this? But you're like, okay, like it's kind of a cool part of racing with a teammate is in the moment you're not loving it, but it kind of forces you, you're like, okay, like that's I can do it. I just gotta dig in and hold on to this wheel and it can give you a better outcome in the end. So as much as yeah, in the moment maybe I wasn't always loving your moves, I feel like it was good and paid off in the end. And we probably both had times where someone's feeling better than the other, but I think that's what kind of helps keep you motivated and keeps you going in these.
Kevin, was that an honest answer from her, Kevin?
Yeah, for sure. I was just thinking too, like there's like verbal confirmation, there's nonverbal. And I know like if I think on stage two, I don't know. I was feeling really good, and you were sort of like whatever because I was like, okay, like this is a nice climb. This is where we're gonna go, kind of thing. And I had sort of said, this is, let's go. As we're 80K in, and all I got was a thumbs up, or a head nod or whatever. And I was like, okay, that means maybe we're not ready to go or just whatever. But then other times it was very verbal. So we had caught, how you said that we were racing forward. I think on stage 3 or 4, we had caught the team, the Brazilian team that was ahead of us. So we arrived at the tail end of them as a couple, and the two of us look at each other and we're like, okay, like let's just settle in and see what they have and see how they ride. And so we did that, and we were just kind of talking a little bit of like what we, you feeling good? Yep, want to go? Yep, okay. And then it was like, Hannah's like, I'm good when you are, kind of thing. Very verbal, very clear. And so we made our move on the Brazilian couple, and turned out the next couple of days we kind of went back and forth, and super nice people. We met them at dinner and around the camp and stuff, and we had a really good battle with that was another father daughter a group too. So
Mhm.
yeah, but there was some times where it was very nonverbal. It's like head nod, thumbs up. Yeah.
Actually,
But then
the I would say the one thing is on days when I was just like, or maybe a climb, and I'd just be like suffering, and I feel like my dad just has an ability to like he just start chatting away to like other people were around, like, oh, and I'm like, so a few of those, but yeah, that's pretty funny.
How do you, you know, in a single day race, the nutrition piece is pretty straightforward. And I don't want to get too in the weeds here, but what do you do on something like this where you're looking at 8 days where you're gonna have to pump the food in while you're riding? How much do you vary things up? And Hannah, we're going to pretend that Flow Formulas is not listening to this conversation for this portion if needed. But yeah, how do we vary things? And I'll start with you, Hannah.
Yeah. Um, to be honest, I actually stuck to pretty similar stuff throughout the week, maybe mixing up like some flavors, but yeah, I've found it's just such hard racing being in single track and just being in like tight quarters with other riders if you're out on the double track. Like I just can't eat a lot of solid food. So um, I train with a lot of like gels and drinking a lot of carbs. So I definitely rely pretty heavily. We had the USWE hydration packs, which was super key to be able to be drinking carbs if you can't really get your hands off the bars for certain times. So I think, yeah, that was huge. And then fortunately, we both had done a lot of training in the heat in Costa Rica, so kind of knew what we could put in our bodies in the heat as well, and kind of balancing liquids as well. But yeah, they were big days and doing it independently without feeds or support. Like we definitely had to be stopping at some of the aid stations to do like a refill or just like grab some extra gels and things. But yeah, I was mostly kind of gels, chews, the odd bar, and drinking a lot of carbs.
Sure. Kevin, how about afterwards each night? Because that's such a huge amount of calories you're trying to replenish. What were you doing for food each night to try and kind of sort of get things back topped up?
Yeah, for sure. One just quick thing before after the race is we chose to do like we slept in an RV and a camper van or whatever on site, and we didn't use the race organizers' food. We cooked our own breakfast in the camper every day, and it was exactly the same breakfast that we would eat here in Costa Rica before a big long ride, and that was pretty key, I think, for setting up the day. It was just I don't want to eat my oatmeal. Like I came home like, oh my God, I don't want to eat oatmeal ever again, kind of thing. But we would do our breakfast. But then when you get off the bike, the race organizer is amazing. Like they have when you cross the line, there's a choice of just like hand grabbing things and Coke and stuff like that that you need right out of the gate. And then they had this sort of staging tent right after the finish line where you could get like a pasta salad or like a sandwich or a wrap. And they literally had if you wanted, you could sit down on some couches and eat and chat with the competitors you just came in with, which was super fun, right? Like race with these guys from Ireland and Namibia, and you end up seeing them. Oh, we saw you guys, and you're just eating as much as you can there. There's always chocolate and strawberry drinks. So, yeah, there's an intake there, and then at the same station, you can grab like a paper bag and then drop in like these takeaway things of rice and couscous and chicken and whatever. So we would usually grab two or three or four of those and in a bag, and then we would take the bars and gels or whatever else they had, and we take it back to the camper van, and we would warm them up in the microwave, or they're off and ready to go. So that was right after the stage, and then maybe half an hour after, and then we let that digest, chill out, get showers, all that stuff, and then usually nibbling on stuff we had set the camper up with a whole bunch of like quick grab food that we could eat all week. For some reason, Pringles tasted amazing. We went through Pringles in the first like day. Like, who's got the Pringles? I'm like, they're gone. Yes, stage one. So yeah, certain foods like you had a craving for before dinner. And then the race organizer again, the evening was fantastic. Just a big, huge mess tent, and each of the four corners had like the same food. So you could transition to whatever corner you want with breads and salads and local or yeah, just everything you could possibly want. It was really good. So we used the meals at dinner, and then there's a big, huge slideshow. And so sometimes you'd pop up on the screen and see yourself. And then they did a multimedia presentation with awards for the day at 7. So yeah, you ended up being over at the dinner hall for probably an hour and a half, chatting with people and fueling and taking your time and watching the festivities. Almost every night was a little bit of a festivities and a show.
So I guess my last question I want to ask before we wrap up here is, why would you recommend doing something like this with a family member? I think oftentimes we think about doing it with like our best homie or whoever, but the idea of doing it with a family member, I think, is not often in our like purview of what we're thinking about. So why would you recommend it? And even for people that don't maybe want to go do a big bike adventure, but just doing some kind of a family adventure with the people that are around you. And Hannah, I'm going to let you go first so Dad can give us more wisdom when he's had a little time to think about
Yeah. Cool. Yeah, I think, well, I guess we are maybe a little bit of a unique. I don't know if too many family members align in their speed and would end on such good terms. So gauge your situation. But yeah, I think just like growing up riding so much with my dad and that we spend so much time training together. And the bike, just riding has been such a huge part of our relationship since I was little that I feel like this was just, yeah, super special to get to spend this time together. And yeah, maybe something that we probably won't do again. And if we hadn't kind of had this opportunity, I don't know if we maybe would have made it happen. So yeah, I think just our history and everything, it's just really special time to spend with a family member.
What do you got, Dad?
Yeah, absolutely. When the kids come back and visit us, there's still tons of layers to their lives. If they come and visit here or at back home in Canada, whatever, they got lots going on. And I feel like this particular event or events like it peels back those layers and you get the true Hannah or true Noah, like my son or my daughter. You get them with the layers all gone to peel the onion back, and it's just the two of us with raw emotions about racing, and it's our competitive spirits come out, and I just absolutely love just sharing time with my family when there's no layers of the rest of the world influencing what's going on. It's just we were just living in the moment, even like other things that were going on in our lives as family or even my coaching, or we just peeled all that back at Cape Epic, and it was just sharing time in the moment at this incredibly cool cultural experience that added the geography of the landscape, and it really was an incredible opportunity to share with Hannah.
That's beautiful. Hannah, if people want to follow along with your story moving forward, where can they find you?
Yeah, Instagram is probably the best spot. So I'm Hannah Sims 11.
Kevin, how about you?
I am at Coach Kevin Sims. And then I'm also on the Ignite platform, which is at Ignite Junior Cycling.
Well, this is fantastic to have both of you on today and just share your story more. And I think there's value in just hearing about families doing things together in a time where you mentioned eating meals together. I think a lot of families today don't even take the time to do that. And so much of that has set up your ability to do this now. And so I just wanted to, when I talked to Kelly last week, she said, "You got to talk to Hannah." And I was like, "Yeah, I do got to talk to Hannah and her dad." So thank you so much for coming on today.
Oh, thank you so much.
Yep, been fantastic to kind of relive it. We're living off the high of being there and doing it.
Thank you so much for hanging out today. If you enjoyed the conversation between Hannah, Kevin, and myself today, do me a favor and share it with someone who you think might enjoy it as well. Also, if you could do us a favor and go and give a thumbs up on YouTube or hit the subscribe button if you're watching on there, or if you're listening on either Apple or Spotify, go and give us a 5-star review, please, and thank you. It helps extend the reach of the show, which is growing exponentially compared to a year ago. And I do want to thank every single one of you who is listening and sharing the show, because as I said, it is growing like crazy. We have a wild rest of the month of April and definitely the most intense month of May that I have done in a while. There are a ton of guests who are on tap and who have been interviewed for a very exciting month. So be sure you're following or subscribed to keep coming back to the show. And more important than all of that, remember your importance in all of this. Remember that you are loved.